Victoria Chen stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror for the third time that evening. She adjusted her navy blue blazer and smoothed down her long black hair. 2 years ago, getting ready for a date would have meant choosing the perfect heels and worrying about whether her dress was too short. Now she focused on making sure her outfit looked professional and put together while sitting in her wheelchair. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, gripping the sides of her custom wheelchair. The sleek black frame cost more than most people's cars, but it was worth every penny. It was fast, reliable, and most importantly, it never let her down. Unlike people. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maya, her assistant and best friend. "Stop overthinking. Richard seems really nice from his profile. Just have fun for once." Victoria rolled her eyes. Fun? When was the last time she had actual fun? Running her tech company kept her busy 70 hours a week, and that's exactly how she liked it. Work was predictable. Work made sense. Work didn't judge her or treat her like she was broken. But Maya had been pestering her for months about dating again. "You're only 32, Vic. You can't hide behind spreadsheets forever," she always said. Finally, Victoria agreed to one blind date, just to get Maya to stop nagging her. The restaurant Maya chose was downtown, one of those fancy places with dim lighting and expensive wine. Victoria arrived 15 minutes early because she always liked to scope out new places first. The hostess was polite but seemed nervous, probably wondering how to handle seating someone in a wheelchair. Victoria was used to it. "I'm meeting someone," Victoria said smoothly. "Richard Patterson. Table for 2 at 7. Of course. Right this way." The hostess led her to a corner table, and Victoria was pleased to see they had actually removed one of the chairs to make space. Small victories. Victoria ordered a glass of wine and checked her phone. Richard was running 10 minutes late, which was already annoying. She hated when people weren't punctual. In business, time was money. In dating, apparently, time was optional. At 7:15, a tall man in an expensive suit approached her table. He had perfectly styled brown hair and looked like he stepped out of a magazine ad. "This had to be Richard. Victoria?" he asked, and she could see his eyes quickly dart down to her wheelchair before snapping back to her face. "Yes. That's me. You must be Richard." She extended her hand for a professional handshake. He sat down across from her, and she noticed he seemed uncomfortable. He kept glancing around the restaurant like he was looking for an escape route. "So," Richard said after ordering a beer, "Maya didn't mention that you were... she didn't tell me about your..." He gestured vaguely toward her wheelchair. Victoria felt her jaw tighten. "About my what, Richard?" "Your situation," he finished awkwardly. "Look, I'm sure you're a lovely person, but I'm really looking for someone more active, someone I can go hiking with, maybe play tennis." Victoria stared at him. "I run a $50 million company. I work out every day. I play wheelchair basketball on weekends. Exactly how much more active do you need?" Richard shifted in his seat. "That's not what I meant. It's just that I have a very active lifestyle and I need someone who can keep up." The conversation went downhill from there. Richard spent 20 minutes talking about his job at the investment firm, his expensive car, and his condo downtown. He asked Victoria exactly 0 questions about her life or her business. When the appetizers arrived, he barely touched his food and kept checking his watch. "Listen, Victoria," he finally said, "you seem really nice, and I'm sure we could be friends, but I just don't think this is going to work out romantically. Maybe we should just call it an evening." He stood up, threw a $20 bill on the table, and walked away without another word. Victoria sat there stunned. She'd been on bad dates before, but never had someone literally walked out on her in the middle of dinner. The waiter approached hesitantly. "Is everything all right, miss?" "Just bring me the check," Victoria said quietly. She felt the heat of embarrassment creeping up her neck. Several other diners were glancing in her direction, probably wondering why the well-dressed woman in the wheelchair was sitting alone. 20 minutes later, Victoria was rolling through the restaurant parking lot toward her car. The evening had turned cold, and thick gray clouds were gathering overhead. Of course it was going to rain, because this night couldn't get any worse. She was halfway to her car when the first drops started falling. Then suddenly her wheelchair lurched to a stop. Victoria tried to push the joystick forward, but nothing happened. The motor made a grinding sound and died completely. "You have got to be kidding me," she muttered, pressing the power button repeatedly. Nothing. Her high-tech, expensive wheelchair had picked the worst possible moment to break down. The rain started coming down harder. Within minutes, Victoria was soaked. Her carefully styled hair was plastered to her head, and her expensive blazer was dripping wet. She fumbled for her phone to call for help, but her hands were shaking from cold and frustration. That's when she heard footsteps splashing through the puddles behind her. "Hey, are you okay?" Victoria turned around to see a man jogging toward her through the rain. He was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt that was quickly getting soaked. His dark hair was messy and he had grease stains on his hands, but his brown eyes looked genuinely concerned. "I'm fine," Victoria said automatically, even though she clearly wasn't. "Your wheelchair broke down?" He was already kneeling beside her chair looking at the motor housing. "Don't touch that," Victoria snapped. "It's a very expensive piece of equipment." The man held up his hands. "Sorry, I'm Jake, by the way. I own the auto repair shop next door. I know it's not a car, but motors are motors. Mind if I take a look?" Victoria wanted to say no. She wanted to tell this stranger to leave her alone and mind his own business, but she was soaking wet, stranded in a parking lot, and her phone battery was dying. "Fine," she said through gritted teeth. "But if you break it, you're buying me a new one." Jake smiled, and Victoria noticed he had a really nice smile. "Deal, can you pop the housing cover?" For the next 10 minutes, Jake worked on her wheelchair in the pouring rain. He didn't complain about getting wet or dirty. He just focused on the problem, occasionally asking her to test something or explaining what he was checking. "Try it now," he finally said, standing up and wiping his hands on his already ruined shirt. Victoria pressed the joystick and the wheelchair hummed to life smoothly. She couldn't believe it. What was wrong with it? She asked. Water got into one of the connections. Happens sometimes with electronics in the rain. I just cleaned it out and made sure everything was sealed properly. Jake shrugged like it was no big deal. "How much do I owe you?" Victoria reached for her purse. "Nothing. Just glad I could help." Jake was already walking backward toward the repair shop. "Get somewhere dry before you catch pneumonia." And just like that, he was gone, disappearing into his shop and leaving Victoria sitting in her perfectly functioning wheelchair, more confused than she had been in months. Who was this guy? And why had he helped her without wanting anything in return? As she drove home that night, Victoria couldn't stop thinking about Jake's easy smile and the way he had fixed her problem without making a big deal about it. He hadn't treated her like she was helpless or pitied her situation. He had just seen someone who needed help and helped. For the first time in 2 years, Victoria Chen found herself smiling as she got ready for bed. And she had no idea why. Victoria spent the entire next week thinking about the mechanic who had helped her in the rain. Every time she tried to focus on work, her mind wandered back to his kind eyes and the way he had fixed her wheelchair without expecting anything in return. It bothered her more than she wanted to admit. "You seem distracted," Maya said during their Monday morning meeting. "How did the date go with Richard?" Victoria made a face. "Let's just say it was a disaster and leave it at that." "That bad? What happened?" "He took one look at my wheelchair and basically ran away." But that's not the weird part. Victoria found herself telling Maya about Jake and how he had helped her when her wheelchair broke down. Maya raised her eyebrows. "A cute mechanic who helped you in the rain and didn't want money? Sounds like something out of a movie." "He wasn't cute," Victoria lied. "He was just helpful." By Friday, Victoria couldn't stand it anymore. She had been raised to always properly thank people who helped her, and leaving things unfinished made her uncomfortable. That's what she told herself as she drove to Rodriguez Auto Repair during her lunch break. The shop was bigger than she had expected. Through the large bay doors, she could see several cars in various stages of repair. The sound of air tools and classic rock music drifted out into the street. Victoria took a deep breath and rolled inside. "Can I help you?" asked a young man covered in motor oil. He looked like he was barely out of high school. "I'm looking for Jake," Victoria said. "Boss, someone here to see you," the young man shouted toward the back of the shop. Jake emerged from under the hood of an old pickup truck, wiping his hands on a rag. When he saw Victoria, his face broke into that same genuine smile she remembered from the rain. "Hey, how's the wheelchair running?" he asked, walking over to her. "Perfect, thanks to you. That's actually why I'm here." Victoria held out an envelope. "I wanted to pay you for the repair and thank you properly." Jake held up his grease-stained hands. "I told you, no charge. It took 5 minutes and cost me nothing. You got soaked in the rain helping a complete stranger. The least I can do is pay you for your time." "Tell you what," Jake said, glancing at his watch. "I was about to grab lunch. There's a little coffee shop down the street that makes amazing sandwiches. Join me and we'll call it even." Victoria hesitated. She had a conference call in an hour, and she never took long lunches. But something about Jake's easy manner made her want to say yes. "Just coffee and a sandwich," she found herself saying. "I have to be back by 1. The coffee shop was small and cozy with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Jake seemed to know everyone there. The woman behind the counter waved at him and started making his usual order without being asked. "Turkey and Swiss for me," Jake told her, "and whatever the lady would like." Victoria ordered a salad and black coffee, and they found a small table by the window. She expected the conversation to be awkward, but Jake was surprisingly easy to talk to. "So what do you do when you're not rescuing people in parking lots?" Victoria asked. Jake laughed. "I've owned the shop for about 5 years now. Bought it from my grandfather when he retired. He taught me everything I know about fixing things." "Do you like it?" "Love it. There's something satisfying about taking something that's broken and making it work again. Plus, I get to work with my hands all day and help people solve their problems." Jake took a bite of his sandwich. "What about you? What kind of business keeps you so busy that you check your phone every 2 minutes?" Victoria looked down, realizing she had indeed been glancing at her phone repeatedly. "Sorry, bad habit. I run a tech company that develops accessibility software." "That's cool. What kind of stuff?" Victoria was used to people's eyes glazing over when she talked about work, but Jake seemed genuinely interested. She found herself explaining her latest project, a program that helped blind users navigate websites more easily. "That could change people's lives," Jake said. "My neighbor's daughter is blind and she struggles with using the internet for school." "Really? I'd love to talk to her about what features would be most helpful." They talked for over an hour. Victoria learned that Jake had grown up in this neighborhood, that he coached Little League baseball on weekends, and that he was working on expanding his shop to include a training program for young people who couldn't afford trade school. "The idea is to give kids real skills they can use to get good jobs," Jake explained. "There are so many young people around here who are smart and hardworking, but they just need someone to give them a chance." "That's a wonderful idea." "Have you written a business plan?" Jake laughed. "I'm better with engines than I am with paperwork. I know what I want to do, but I'm not sure how to make it sound official enough to get funding." Victoria felt a spark of excitement. This was the kind of problem she loved solving. "I could help you with that if you want. Business plans are kind of my thing. You'd do that? Why not? You helped me. I help you." Over the next few weeks, Victoria found herself stopping by Jake's shop more often than she cared to admit. Sometimes she brought him drafts of the business plan they were working on together. Sometimes she just happened to be in the neighborhood during lunch. She told herself it was purely business, but she couldn't ignore how much she looked forward to their conversations. Jake had a way of making her laugh that she had forgotten was possible. He told terrible jokes about car parts and had funny stories about the strange things people brought to his shop. "Lady brought me her vacuum cleaner yesterday," Jake told her one afternoon as they sat outside the shop sharing a bag of chips. "Said her car was making the same noise and wanted me to fix both of them." "Did you?" Victoria asked, trying not to smile. "Fixed the vacuum. Turned out it just needed a new belt. The car needed new brakes. She was so happy she baked me cookies." Jake grinned. Sometimes being a mechanic is more about being a problem solver than anything else. Victoria noticed that Jake never mentioned her wheelchair unless it was relevant to what they were talking about. He didn't open doors for her any differently than he opened them for anyone else. He didn't speak to her more loudly or slowly like some people did. He just treated her like a person, which was more refreshing than she had expected. One Thursday, Victoria realized she was humming while she worked. Maya noticed too. "You seem happy lately," Maya observed during their afternoon meeting. "I'm always happy," Victoria said, but even she didn't believe it. "No, you're usually focused and efficient. This is different. You're actually humming, and you've been taking lunch breaks, which you never do." Victoria tried to deny it, but Maya was right. For the first time in 2 years, she was looking forward to something besides work. She was looking forward to seeing Jake, hearing his stories, and working on his business plan together. The strangest part was that she had started noticing things again. The way the afternoon sun hit the windows in her office, the sound of laughter from the break room. The fact that her favorite coffee shop had added a new flavor she wanted to try. It was like someone had turned up the brightness on her life, and she was pretty sure she knew who was responsible. The question was, what was she going to do about it? On Friday afternoon, as Victoria was getting ready to leave work, Jake texted her. Finished the first draft of the business plan. Want to celebrate with pizza? Victoria stared at the message for a long time. Pizza sounded casual. Pizza sounded like something friends did together. Pizza sounded like the kind of normal, simple happiness she had convinced herself she didn't need anymore. She typed back quickly before she could change her mind. Yes, but I'm buying. As she drove to meet Jake, Victoria realized she was smiling again, and for once she didn't question why. The pizza place Jake chose was nothing fancy. Red checkered tablecloths, plastic chairs, and the smell of garlic bread filling the air. Victoria couldn't remember the last time she had eaten somewhere so casual, and she was surprised to find she liked it. This place has been here since I was a kid, Jake said, sliding a slice of pepperoni pizza onto her plate. My grandfather used to bring me here after baseball games. It's perfect, Victoria said, and she meant it. There was something refreshing about being somewhere that didn't require a reservation or a dress code. They spread the business plan papers across the table, and Victoria was impressed by how much thought Jake had put into his ideas. His handwriting was messy, but his vision was clear. You want to start with automotive repair training, then expand into other trades? She asked, scanning through his notes. Eventually, yeah. Plumbing, electrical work, maybe even some computer repair. There are so many good-paying jobs that don't require a college degree, but kids don't know how to get started. Victoria nodded. The numbers look good. You've really thought this through. I've had a lot of time to think about it. Been working on cars since I was 12, and I see how much money people spend on repairs they could learn to do themselves. As they worked through the financial projections, Victoria found herself watching Jake's face. He got this intense look when he was concentrating, and his eyes lit up when he talked about helping people learn new skills. My turn to ask a personal question, Jake said suddenly. What made you start your company? Victoria paused with her pizza halfway to her mouth. Most people asked about her business in a polite, surface-level way. Jake seemed genuinely curious. I was working for a big tech company when I had my accident, she said slowly. When I came back to work, I realized how many everyday things weren't designed for people like me. Simple stuff like using a website or navigating a building. I figured if I was having these problems, millions of other people were too. So you decided to fix it. I decided to try. Started small, working on projects in my spare time. Then I realized I could make a bigger impact if I had my own company. Jake leaned back in his chair. That's pretty amazing. You turned something terrible into a way to help people. Victoria felt her cheeks warm. She wasn't used to people seeing her work that way. Most people focused on how successful her company was, not on the why behind it. Over the next few weeks, their business meetings became a regular thing. Jake would close the shop early on Thursdays, and they would spread papers across the table at the pizza place or sometimes at the coffee shop. Victoria found herself looking forward to these meetings more than her actual business meetings. Tell me about your family, Victoria said one evening as they worked on the marketing section of his plan. Jake's expression grew softer. Lost my parents when I was 15. Car accident. My grandfather took me in and taught me everything about fixing things, not just cars, but anything that was broken. I'm sorry, Victoria said quietly. It was hard, but my grandfather was amazing. He always said that fixing things was about more than just the mechanical stuff. It was about giving people hope that problems could be solved. Victoria thought about her own family. Her parents were successful, demanding, and had very specific ideas about what her life should look like. They loved her, but they had never really understood her drive to build her own company. My family thinks I work too much, she admitted. They're always trying to set me up with suitable men from their social circle. They mean well, but they don't really get that I'm happy with my life the way it is. Are you? Jake asked. Happy with your life the way it is? The question caught Victoria off guard. A month ago, she would have said yes without hesitation. Work was enough. Success was enough. But lately, she had started wondering if maybe there was room for more. I used to think I was, she said honestly. Their eyes met across the table, and Victoria felt something shift between them. The air felt charged like right before a storm. Jake reached across the table and touched her hand gently. Victoria, I hope this doesn't mess up our business partnership, but I really like spending time with you. Victoria's heart started beating faster. I like spending time with you too. Would you maybe want to do something together that isn't work-related? There's a food festival downtown this Saturday. Live music, local restaurants, that kind of thing. Victoria hesitated. A food festival sounded like a date. An actual official date? She hadn't been on a real date since before her accident. I don't know, she said. What if it's crowded? What if the paths aren't accessible? I already checked their website, Jake said with a smile. Full accessibility information posted. Wide pathways, accessible bathrooms, reserved seating areas. Plus, I called and talked to the organizers. They're really proud of how inclusive they've made it. Victoria stared at him. You called ahead? Of course. I wanted to make sure you'd be comfortable. Something melted inside Victoria's chest. When was the last time someone had thought ahead about her needs without making a big deal about it? Okay, she said. It's a date. Saturday arrived faster than Victoria expected. She changed clothes 3 times before settling on jeans and a soft blue sweater that Maya had bought her months ago, but she'd never worn. It felt strange getting dressed for something that wasn't work. Jake picked her up in his truck, which had been modified with a lift for her wheelchair. He had clearly put thought into this. The festival was everything he had promised. The pathways were wide and smooth. There were plenty of places to sit, and the food smells were incredible. Jake had brought a small backpack with bottles of water and wet wipes, clearly thinking ahead again. What do you want to try first? He asked as they looked at the long row of food trucks. Everything, Victoria said, feeling more relaxed than she had in years. They shared tacos from a Mexican truck, tried gourmet mac and cheese from another vendor, and split a piece of funnel cake that was bigger than Victoria's head. Jake made her laugh by trying to eat a loaded hot dog without getting sauce on his shirt and failing spectacularly. You have mustard on your chin, Victoria said, giggling. Where? Jake asked, wiping the wrong side of his face. Here, let me, Victoria said, reaching up with a napkin to clean his face. For a moment, they were very close, and Victoria became aware of how good Jake smelled, like soap and something uniquely him. Their eyes met, and she thought he might kiss her. Instead, Jake smiled and said, Thanks. Good thing you're here to keep me civilized. The live music was better than expected. A local band played covers of old rock songs, and Victoria found herself swaying along in her chair. Jake noticed and started dancing beside her, making silly moves that made her laugh until her sides hurt. I can't remember the last time I danced, Victoria said as the band took a break. You're dancing now, Jake pointed out. This isn't really dancing. Says who? Jake moved his chair closer to hers. Dancing is just moving to music with someone you care about. Victoria felt her breath catch. Someone he cared about. When had that happened? As the sun started to set, they found a quiet spot near a fountain to finish their drinks and people watch. Families walked by with tired children. Couples held hands and groups of friends laughed together. Thank you, Victoria said suddenly. For what? For today. For not making it weird. For just treating me like a normal person who you wanted to spend time with. Jake turned to look at her seriously. Victoria, you are a normal person I want to spend time with. The wheelchair is just the thing that gets you around. It's not who you are. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears. I haven't felt normal in a very long time. Then those people were idiots, Jake said simply. As they drove home that evening, Victoria realized something had changed. She wasn't just enjoying Jake's company anymore. She was falling for him. The thought should have scared her, but instead, it felt like coming alive again. For the first time since her accident, Victoria Chen was looking forward to tomorrow, and it had nothing to do with work. Victoria knew she was in trouble when she caught herself humming while reviewing quarterly reports. Maya noticed it too, giving her knowing looks during meetings. But it wasn't until her mother called that Victoria realized how obvious her happiness had become. You sound different, dear, her mother said during their weekly phone call. More cheerful. Are you seeing someone? Victoria hesitated. Her family had very specific ideas about who she should date. Rich, educated, preferably from a family they already knew. Jake didn't fit any of those categories. I'm just doing well at work, Mom. The new accessibility software is getting great reviews. That's wonderful, but I wasn't asking about work. Your father and I were just talking to the Petersons about their son, David. He's a doctor now, very successful, and he specifically asked about you. Victoria closed her eyes. Mom, I'm not interested in being set up right now. Why not? You're 32, Victoria. You can't hide behind your career forever. After hanging up, Victoria felt the familiar weight of her family's expectations settling on her shoulders. They loved her, she knew that, but they also had a very narrow view of what her life should look like. Over the next few weeks, Victoria tried to keep Jake separate from the rest of her life. When Maya asked about her lunch plans, Victoria was vague. When Jake suggested meeting somewhere closer to her office, she insisted on their usual spots near his shop. But secrets have a way of coming out, especially when you're as bad at keeping them as Victoria was turning out to be. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Victoria was at Jake's shop, laughing at something he had said about a customer who insisted their car was making a noise like a dying walrus when a sleek black sedan pulled up outside. Victoria's blood ran cold as her older brother, Tony, stepped out of the car, looking completely out of place in his expensive suit. "Victoria?" Tony's voice carried a tone she recognized from childhood. It was the voice he used when she was in trouble. Jake looked between them, clearly sensing the tension. "This is your brother?" "Tony, what are you doing here?" Victoria asked, her stomach sinking. "Looking for you. Maya said you were at a meeting, but she seemed nervous when I asked where." Tony's eyes swept over the auto shop with obvious distaste. "This is where you've been spending your lunch breaks?" Jake stepped forward, wiping his hands on a rag. "I'm Jake Rodriguez. Nice to meet you." Tony barely glanced at Jake's outstretched hand. "Right, well, Victoria, we need to talk. Family dinner is tonight, remember? Dad specifically wants to discuss some business matters with you." Victoria had completely forgotten about the family dinner. She looked at Jake apologetically. "I have to go." "Of course," Jake said, but she could see the hurt in his eyes. The dinner was even worse than Victoria had expected. Her parents' house was all marble floors and crystal chandeliers, designed to impress rather than welcome. The conversation was polite and surface level until dessert, when her father cleared his throat. "Tony tells me you've been spending time at an auto repair shop," he said, cutting straight to the point as always. "I've been helping someone with a business plan," Victoria replied carefully. "The mechanic," her mother added with a slight frown. "Tony said he seemed rough around the edges. His name is Jake, and he's a very good businessman. He's trying to start a training program for young people." Her father leaned back in his chair. "Victoria, I'm concerned about your judgment. What do you really know about this man? I know he's kind, hardworking, and genuinely cares about helping people. And I'm sure he's very interested in your bank account," Tony said with a smirk. Victoria felt anger flare in her chest. "That's not fair, isn't it?" her mother asked gently. "Sweetheart, you're a very wealthy woman. You own a successful company. You have to be careful about people's motives." "He doesn't even know how much money I have," Victoria protested. "He knows you drive a Mercedes and can afford to eat lunch out every day," her father pointed out. "He's not stupid." The conversation continued for another hour, with her family laying out all the reasons why Jake was wrong for her. He was too different. He came from a different world. He probably saw her as his ticket to a better life. By the time Victoria left, seeds of doubt had been planted in her mind. She spent the drive home thinking about every interaction she'd had with Jake, looking for signs that her family might be right. Over the next few days, Victoria found herself pulling away. She canceled their Thursday meeting, claiming she had too much work. When Jake texted asking if she was okay, she gave short, polite responses. Jake wasn't stupid. He noticed the change immediately. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked when she finally answered his call on Friday. "No. I just think maybe we should focus on finishing your business plan and keep things professional." There was a long pause. "Professional, right? Can I ask what changed?" Victoria couldn't bring herself to tell him about her family's concerns. It sounded too cruel, too snobbish, even though part of her wondered if they had a point. "I just think it's better this way," she said weakly. Jake was quiet for a moment. "Okay, if that's what you want." But Jake wasn't the type to give up easily. Over the next 2 weeks, he continued working on his business plan and sending Victoria updates. Not romantic messages, just straightforward business communications. He was professional, just like she had asked, but she could sense his confusion and hurt between the lines. Meanwhile, Victoria threw herself back into work, staying late every night and avoiding anywhere she might run into Jake. Maya kept giving her worried looks, but Victoria insisted she was fine. She wasn't fine. She was miserable, and she missed Jake more than she wanted to admit. But every time she thought about calling him, she heard her father's voice asking what she really knew about Jake's motives. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday evening. Victoria was working late when Maya knocked on her office door. "There's someone here to see you," Maya said with a strange expression. Victoria looked up to see Jake standing in her office doorway, soaking wet and looking nervous. He was wearing his best jeans and a button-down shirt instead of his usual work clothes. "Hi," he said simply. "Jake, what are you doing here? How did you even get past security?" "I told them I had a business appointment with the CEO. Technically true, since I wanted to talk to you about the business plan." Jake stepped into her office, looking around at the sleek furniture and expensive art. "Nice place." Victoria felt suddenly self-conscious about the obvious wealth displayed in her office. "Thank you." Jake pulled out a folder and set it on her desk. "The business plan is finished. I wanted to thank you for your help and let you know that I got the funding." "You did? That's wonderful." Victoria felt genuine excitement for him, followed immediately by the realization that this meant they had no reason to see each other anymore. "Yeah, the Community Development Fund loved the idea. They're giving me enough to get started, hire 3 instructors, and take on the first class of students." Jake's smile was proud but cautious. "I couldn't have done it without your help. You did all the hard work. I just helped you put it on paper." Jake sat down across from her desk and his expression grew serious. "Victoria, I need to ask you something and I want you to be honest with me." Victoria's heart started beating faster. "Okay. Is this really about keeping things professional, or did someone tell you that I was using you for your money?" Victoria's silence was answer enough. Jake nodded slowly. "I figured. Want to tell me who?" "It doesn't matter," Victoria said quietly. "It matters to me." "Was it your family?" Victoria looked down at her hands. "They're just looking out for me." "And what do you think?" "I don't know what to think anymore," Victoria admitted. "I don't have much experience with this kind of thing. Dating, relationships. Maybe they're right to be concerned." Jake leaned forward in his chair. "Victoria, look at me." Reluctantly, she met his eyes. "I'm not going to lie to you. I noticed your car, your clothes, the fact that you own a company. I'm not blind. But you know what I noticed first? The way you listened when I talked about my ideas, the way you got excited about helping people, the way you made me laugh even when you were trying to be all business and serious." Victoria felt tears starting to form. "But what if nothing?" Jake interrupted gently. "I've been taking care of myself since I was 15 years old. I own my business, I pay my bills, and I've never needed anyone to rescue me. I don't need your money, Victoria. I need your terrible jokes and the way you hum when you think no one is listening, and the fact that you actually care about making the world better for people." Victoria was crying now, and she didn't care. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Jake stood up and walked around her desk. "I'm not going to pretend that we don't come from different worlds, because we do. But I thought we were building something together. Something real." "We were," Victoria whispered. "We are." Jake gently touched her face, wiping away her tears. "So what do we do now?" Victoria looked into his eyes and saw nothing but honesty and affection. Her family might never understand, but she was tired of letting other people's fears make her decisions. "We try again," she said. "But this time, I don't let anyone else tell me what to think." Jake smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him in weeks. "I'd like that," as he pulled her into his arms. Victoria realized that taking a chance on love might be scary, but living without it was even scarier. 6 months after their reconciliation in Victoria's office, everything had changed. Victoria watched from across the room as Jake demonstrated how to change brake pads to a group of eager teenagers. His first class at the Rodriguez Community Training Center had started 3 weeks ago, and Jake was in his element. "See how the brake pad sits in the caliper?" Jake was saying, his hands dirty but his smile bright. "Always check for wear on both sides. Safety first, always." A young woman raised her hand. "Mr. Rodriguez, what if the rotor is warped?" "Great question, Linda. Anyone want to guess what we do then?" Victoria smiled as she watched the interaction. Jake had a natural gift for teaching, making complicated concepts seem simple and encouraging questions instead of making students feel stupid for asking. "You're proud of him," Maya said, appearing beside Victoria with 2 cups of coffee. "I am," Victoria admitted. "Look at those kids. 3 weeks ago, most of them had never held a wrench. Now they're talking about brake systems like they've been doing it for years. The training center had exceeded everyone's expectations. What started as a small automotive program had grown into something much bigger. Word spread quickly through the community, and soon Jake had a waiting list of young people eager to learn useful skills. But the real success story was what happened after Victoria decided to get more involved. It started when Jake mentioned that several of his students were struggling with the computer-based parts of their training. Modern cars rely heavily on computer diagnostics, but many of his students didn't have experience with technology. What if we could create a program that made car diagnostics easier to understand? Victoria had suggested during one of their evening planning sessions. Like what? Interactive software that shows how different car systems work. Visual learning instead of just reading manuals. Jake's eyes had lit up with that excited look she loved. That could be incredible. Half of learning mechanics is understanding how all the parts work together. 6 weeks later, Victoria's company had developed a prototype educational software specifically for automotive training. It used simple graphics and step-by-step tutorials to teach everything from basic engine function to complex electrical systems. The students loved it. More importantly, they were learning faster and retaining information better than anyone had expected. This changes everything, Jake had told her after watching his students master a complicated electrical diagnosis using the new software. We could help training programs across the country with this. That conversation led to Victoria's next big decision. She was in the middle of a board meeting when her father called, demanding she come to dinner immediately to discuss family business. Victoria knew what that meant. Another lecture about Jake and another attempt to set her up with someone more suitable. I need to step out for a moment, Victoria told her board members. She answered the call right there in the conference room, putting it on speaker without her father knowing. Victoria, we need to talk. Your mother ran into Patricia Chen at the club today, and she mentioned seeing you with that mechanic again. This has gone on long enough. Dad, I'm in a board meeting. Then you'll understand the importance of what I'm about to say. The Patterson family has expressed continued interest in introducing you to their son, David. He's a surgeon now. Very successful, and frankly, he's exactly the kind of man you should be with. Victoria looked around the table at her board members, all successful business people who had worked with her for years and respected her judgment. Then she thought about Jake, who was probably covered in grease right now, teaching young people skills that would change their lives. Dad, I need you to listen to me very carefully, Victoria said, making sure her voice was clear and strong. I am not interested in David Patterson or anyone else you want to set me up with. I'm in love with Jake Rodriguez, and he's the best man I've ever met. Victoria, you're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years, she interrupted. Jake doesn't need my money. He's built his own successful business from nothing. He doesn't see me as a charity case because of my wheelchair. He sees me as someone worth loving exactly as I am. And if you can't accept that, then maybe we need to have a different conversation about what family means. The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. Victoria looked around the conference table at her board members, who were trying to pretend they hadn't just heard her personal life discussed in detail. Actually, she said, an idea forming as she spoke, I think it's time this board knew about a new project I want to propose. She spent the next 20 minutes explaining her idea for a joint venture between her tech company and Jake's training center. Educational software designed specifically for trade schools, with plans to expand into other areas of technical training. The market potential is enormous, she explained. Trade schools across the country are desperate for better training tools. We could revolutionize how technical education works. The board was intrigued. By the end of the meeting, they had approved funding for a pilot program and agreed to explore partnership opportunities with community training centers nationwide. Victoria drove straight to Jake's shop after the meeting, her heart pounding with excitement. How would you feel about going national? She asked as soon as she found him. Jake looked up from the engine he was working on, confusion clear on his face. What? Victoria explained everything. The board meeting, the funding approval, the vision for expanding their educational software to training centers across the country. You want to turn our little side project into a real business? Jake asked, sitting down heavily on a work stool. I want to turn your dream into reality, Victoria said. You wanted to help young people learn valuable skills. What if we could help thousands of young people, instead of just the ones in our neighborhood? Jake was quiet for a long time, thinking it over. It would mean a lot of changes. More responsibility, probably more stress. It would also mean a lot more impact. Jake smiled slowly. When do we start? Over the next 4 months, Victoria and Jake worked together more closely than ever before. She handled the business side while he focused on curriculum development and instructor training. They spent long nights in the training center, surrounded by computers and car parts, building something neither of them could have created alone. The day of the grand opening celebration for their expanded facility, Victoria arrived early to help set up. The training center had grown from 2 car bays to a full facility with classrooms, computer labs, and space for multiple types of technical training. Local news crews were setting up cameras, community leaders were arriving, and their first graduating class of automotive technicians was proudly showing off their skills to families and friends. Nervous? Jake asked, appearing beside Victoria with 2 cups of coffee. Excited, Victoria said, accepting the coffee gratefully. Look at what we built. Around them, the facility was buzzing with activity. Students were demonstrating what they had learned. Parents were asking questions about enrollment, and other training centers from neighboring cities had sent representatives to learn about their program. Ladies and gentlemen, Jake said into the microphone as the crowd gathered for the opening ceremony, welcome to the Rodriguez Community Training Center. This place exists because we believe that everyone deserves the chance to learn skills that can change their lives. He went on to thank the Community Development Fund, the local businesses that had supported them, and the students who had made it all worthwhile. Then he paused and looked directly at Victoria. But mostly, this place exists because one person believed in the idea from the very beginning and helped turn a dream into reality. Victoria Chen isn't just my business partner. She's the reason any of this was possible. The crowd applauded, but Victoria barely heard it. She was watching Jake's face, seeing the pride and joy there, and feeling overwhelmed by how much their lives had changed. Later that evening, after the crowds had gone home and the equipment had been put away, Victoria and Jake sat in the empty training center, sharing a pizza and reflecting on the day. Remember when you thought your biggest problem was a broken wheelchair in a parking lot? Jake asked, grinning at her. Remember when you thought your biggest dream was helping a dozen kids learn to fix cars? Victoria replied. Jake reached over and took her hand. I never thanked you properly. For what? For taking a chance on me, on us. On this crazy idea that we could build something together. Victoria looked around at the training center they had created, thought about the students who would learn here, the software they were developing, and the future they were building together. Thank you for helping me remember that the best things in life are worth taking risks for, she said. As they locked up the center that night, Victoria realized that her old life felt like it belonged to someone else. The woman who had been afraid to smile, who had hidden behind work and walls, who had almost let fear keep her from the greatest adventure of her life. Jake pushed her wheelchair playfully fast across the parking lot, while she laughed and pretended to complain about his driving technique. They were partners in every sense of the word, in business, in dreams, and in building a life together that was better than anything either of them had imagined alone. The woman who had given up on love had found it in the most unexpected place. And the man who fixed broken things had helped her fix the most important thing of all, her belief that she deserved to be happy.